Boy oh boy, where do I start here? Facebook.com/TubuGunslinger, Twitter @JohnReinott. John Ott here with you. It's been a long time since I did one of these. It's time to review God of War on the PlayStation 4. And I'm just going to be right out there and go right to brass tacks. If you were playing this game at a friend's house and you did not have a PlayStation 4, by the time you were done with it and you were done with whatever you had to do, you would race right home, get a PlayStation 4, buy yourself a copy of God of War, and just enjoy yourself. This is one of the best console exclusives that I've ever played, and Sony and Santa Monica Studios have outdone themselves on this one, because not only have they have incredible graphics, movie-like storytelling, incredible heartfelt thoughts, clever writing, great voice acting from Christopher Judge as Kratos. Everything is believable there. The action is frantic and fast-paced, and everything is just fun, whether you're using the Leviathan axe or some of the weapons that you're accustomed to if you're a familiar person in the God of War series. Everything else is probably about as good as you can ever expect the game to be, and that's not putting it lightly. And if I would tell you to go out there and buy a console just to play one game, that's not something that I want to throw out there lightly, because you're going through probably $300 in a PS4 and then a $60 copy of the game, something similar to that. But you owe it to yourself to play a game as good as this. Now, there's a couple other things before we actually talk about the game a little bit. There's not going to be any spoilers in this review. You're just going to see me take out the Queen of the Valkyries here and then some optional content in Niflheim. And that's pretty much the only gameplay that you're going to see. You're going to have to get everything for yourself as far as the gameplay, and I want you to play it, not try to spoil anything here. But first things first, being a console exclusive and being God of War, if you want to call this essentially a reboot, you can do that. Technically, this could be the fourth game in the series. If you want to go that far, you got the first two on the PlayStation 2, God of War 3 on the PlayStation 3, and I think a couple of PSP titles, including Ascension for the PSP. So, pretty much what you're doing is you're following Kratos and his son Atreus in a journey to spread their mother's ashes at the highest peak of the realm that you're in. That's as far as I'm going to go in here. It's very gripping, very heartfelt. Everything else is about as top-notch as you can get. But there's a couple things that I want to point out that I think that's very important. Now, Santa Monica Studio, they had a little bit of a risk to undertake as far as what God of War was. Do you want to strip away some of that fast-paced content, some of that gore, blood, and sex, and things that were ultimately devised throughout God of War? Or are you going to be comfortable going with a complete reimagining? It's been a while since God of War 3. Fans were hungry for a new game. Are you going to try to keep it more of the same, or are you going to try to change things up a little bit? Now, Santa Monica Studio obviously chose the latter, because you're bringing in another character, being his son Atreus, for the son of Sparta here, if you want to call him that, for Kratos and some of the other things that had happened throughout prior history. This guy does not need any help. He can rip off limbs of gods and just behead everything and make it as bloody and as disgusting as possible, but all the fans love the action. But it was a massive undertaking, in my opinion, as far as Santa Monica Studios went, because you're adding in another character, you're adding in another sense of storytelling that you would not get essentially from some of these other games, and you're changing the gameplay around a little bit. You are using your son to use arrows, try to combo enemies, grapple them up in the air, chain combos a la Street Fighter a little bit if you want to go that far, making the gameplay just balance between two characters while you have a absolute badass in Kratos. Actually, you also have his son that turns out to be very effective too, but it's a lot different. In terms of having sequels in games like this, you usually expect more of the same, especially if you're not a AAA studio like Santa Monica Studios is, and Sony putting a lot of money and time and effort into this game, having over a 5-year cycle to the game itself. It's fair to say that other studios would not be able to have a massive undertaking like this to change the direction of the game and the tone of the game as much as they have. But be that as it may, Sony and Santa Monica have done a great service as far as not only rebooting the series and making it feel incredibly fresh, but also giving fans to experience something new for the first time, just like me. I've gone into the God of War series having not played any of the previous titles, and I can assure you that if you go into this game fresh as I have, not only will you be blown away by the gameplay and the experience and everything else that's brought along with it, but you won't feel left behind as far as the storylines and arcs and some of the things that you see. Now, what I would recommend as you go along is maybe kind of introduce yourself a little bit into the Norse terminology, some of the history, some of the stuff that this game might be loosely based off of, so you can get a grasp of enemy types, history and lore and things like that. Although the game does a good job of showing you some of that too, it also gets you a little bit attuned to what you might see, which makes the game a lot more fun in that sense of knowing some of the other things that have happened. Now, the mythology and everything else is based off a little loosely on God of War, and some of that stuff, there might be some liberties that might have been taken if you were very familiar with all of that, but it's really incredible. Now, the combat system when I first played the game and when I was first introduced into it was pretty simple. You use your, not the face buttons really, but your R1, R2 to swing the axe around. You hold L2 to ready the axe, and then you press R2 to throw it. Kind of like you see me here with this runic chest that we're trying to open. Now you're going to be doing a lot of that stuff early in the game. You're going to aim for the head or aim for the legs to get the weak points in on the enemies, and just go to town there. So at the beginning, you're going to have a couple of axe swings and then a couple of throws. And I thought initially, when I first played the first couple hours of this game, I think it's about a 10 to 15 hour main campaign. It's pretty short and linear in that regard, but the $60 price tag and everything else does come into a big way where you get your value worth out of it, because there is a lot of optional realms and stuff that you can tackle in order to get higher power level equipment, as you see here. And it's going to test all of your skills, and in the sense, not talking within the first 2 hours like I just mentioned, but when you get farther throughout this game, you really realize how deep the combat system is and how much you need to master it in order to survive, especially in optional areas like this. Because as I mentioned, you get the axe throws and some of the other couple of slashes, but you get a lot of hack silver, which is your currency in this game, and experience points from killing enemies. You can get more of it by having a higher luck stat. But what you can do is you start building up some of your skills as you upgrade the axe. As you upgrade some of your other weapons, you can also use shield combat, hand-to-hand combat. And then you find out you can start comboing off of the axe, comboing off of the hand-to-hand, some of the other stuff that you can get. And you find out how deep the combat system is. If you press the L3 and R3 together, that bottom meter that you've seen throughout the gameplay is the orange meter, the rage meter. And what that allows Kratos to do is get into an invulnerability type state, which allows him to recover health with every subsequent hit that he puts on an enemy. You chain that in with times when you really need help, and you can also cancel out of the L3, R3, which allows you to stagger an enemy and then go back to town when you need to as you build it up. So you can also chain combos that way. And the game also encourages you to combo very heavily with Atreus, with the bows, because you get blue arrows, which are your stun arrows. You see that red meter there where I stun one of the dark elves and you do pretty much a killing move right there. And then your shock arrows, which are also very important as you go progress throughout the game. When you switch to those, you can switch to it by using up on the D-pad. It allows you, when enemies are close, when you're using a shock arrow, to chain lightning to other enemies across the screen. So what you will be doing is switching weapons on the fly, left to right, and also switching arrows. And then Atreus, as you see on the bottom right-hand corner, is there's also a runic attack, just like how Kratos has a couple for a couple of his weapons, that Atreus can also get some as well to help try to combo and keep things going and save your bacon sometimes. So pretty much what you get through God of War is a 10 to 15 hour main campaign, quite possibly in this second realm here. I like to call it just the fog and toxic realm in Niflheim. What I'm doing is I have a couple of equipment, kind of endgame equipment here to keep that oxygen meter going up as high as I can, and then a ring that you can also get to keep that oxygen meter going. And at the end of this optional part of the realm gets you mist echoes, which you turn in to get some of the best equipment in the game, which allows you to take on the Valkyrie and stuff that you saw throughout earlier. So to summarize, what you get throughout this game is not only incredible emotional gameplay and story, you also get something that you haven't seen, and gameplay that it doesn't cut from the main character, goes all the way through. You don't have to pay stuff for DLC. You get an incredible experience, 10 to 15 hours. Probably, if I want to be honest with you, you can get close to 30 hours out of gameplay out of this as you go through some of this optional content, if you're going to want to go through that. And you find the combat system is as fun as it is, you're going to want to go ahead and try to get as much mileage as you can out of the game. Now, what I want to say, even though I'm not going to have any spoilers in here, as you progress throughout the game and you find out, if you're aware, that this game had about over a 5-year cycle to get the game made, there is a few suggestions throughout the end of the game to suggest that a sequel will be coming soon. Now, I know that the PlayStation 5 is not going to be launching in 2018, but it is likely we could see it Christmas 2019 or maybe something early 2020. And it would be pretty reasonable to suggest that this next God of War is going to come a lot sooner than you think. Maybe within the next 1.5 to 2 years, which could possibly be a PlayStation 5 launch title or Horizon 2. So, with the game as good as this, if you're wondering whether or not you should wait to play this game on a PlayStation 5, I wouldn't wait. You don't need a PlayStation 4 Pro. Everything else runs as smoothly as you can get. I only had a handful of slowdown maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the game. In a couple of story mode, I went maybe about a couple of seconds and then it faded away quite quickly. Everything else is top notch, from the gameplay, voice acting, graphics, storytelling. This is all top notch, guys. And as I had mentioned, Santa Monica Studios has taken something in God of War and they've given it a fresh coat of paint, a reboot if you will, to make it an experience that should not be missed by anyone. And if you're going to get a console to play one game, I know that's not something I want to go ahead and throw out there lightly, because I know it's a lot of money. But if you absolutely get the chance to do it, I don't think I've played a single player game as good as this in the action department, or a single player game as good as this probably since Zelda on the Switch. You know how much that was very highly regarded. God of War could easily win Game of the Year, and it's a staple for how you make single player games. This is John Ott signing off. Sports in the D, Facebook.com/GBUGunslinger, Twitter @JohnRyanott. We'll be back with a review shortly, as Dragon's Crown Pro is coming out pretty soon. Have a good one, guys. Peace.